Hello, guys and gals. Me, Mudahar. I think we. Oh man, ladies and gentlemen, today is a good day. Today we get to look at something stupid from Google that was so stupid they pulled it within a 24-hour period, man. Now, ladies and gentlemen, one of the coolest things that I think I've probably ever shown you guys is something known as Google Earth. Okay, now remember like a year ago, one of my favorite things to do is to go on like the internet, look up like weird Google Earth finds, so to speak. Right? There's a whole community for it. But remember like a year ago, kind of there was like this whole like social media thing where people found this one area in Los Angeles, Cesar Chavez Boulevard. And of course, going into a Google Earth archive or basically looking at Google Earth, you would see all these help signs basically scattered across this area. Now, obviously, the internet was like, whoa, this is kind of creepy. This is like weird. But the reality is, this shit was real. This is a real thing you can pull up from historical image data on Google Earth. And of course, one of the best things about Google Maps is kind of exploring parts of the world and seeing things without kind of actually ever really going there, right? Now, obviously on Google Maps, if you look at this exact location, you can't see the health sign, okay? It seems like Google might have actually removed it from this case right over here. Now, look, I love Google Earth. I really do find this shit awesome, okay? But at the end of the day, ladies and gentlemen, let's be completely real. How can Google, a company that is investing billions of dollars into AI slop, go to make it worse? Well, I'm going to let you, the audience, kind of figure it out, okay? This is from Google's new page. July 30th, okay? July 30th. Transform any place with Nenu Banana, which is their, I guess, like, image generation, like, model. So just think for a second. Satellite images, image generation. Surely nothing may go wrong here, right? So if we look at what they're saying, basically their concepts are you can bring history to life. So teachers can show their classroom a historic site and type, render a hyper-realistic view. Hyper-realistic. It's like a fucking creepypasta for the what these Pompeii ruins look like in 78 AD. So take these ruins and put AI slop over them. And of course, obviously, your kids will look at that and go, "Wow, I'm so blown away." Let me get back to Snapchat or whatever the kids do. Hey, are you working on a building redevelopment? Well, just generate what it could look like with Nano Banana. Okay. Hey, do you see this home? Do you see this forest over here? How about you develop a very, very poorly scaled home and just generate that in? So yeah, you can imagine. Look, it's a shitty image generation model that's basically placed over, obviously, a Google Earth satellite feed. So immediately in my mind, I was like, oh man, what if somebody generated like 9/11 on that? Immediately that's where my mind went to. And society does not let me down, ladies and gentlemen. They in fact did show me what happens when you ask Gemini, hey, show me a plane flying into a skyscraper in Manhattan. Now, I don't know if that was the exact prompt, but it sure as fuck gave a pretty spooky looking image. The only way the story could somehow be like blown me away even harder is this all happened on the 11th of September, okay? We literally have had a big company in the US basically drop one of their image models into Google Earth. A place that I would say is kind of known for sterling historical record and accuracy, and just dropping like an image model. I mean, I'm sure that there was some people working at Google who probably were like, wait, chief, we should add some guardrails to this. Seems like they didn't. Seems like they didn't give a fuck. Now you might be like, whoa, Muda, but how do I make sure that isn't AI generated? Now the reality is, look, again, obviously that looked pretty fake to me. But what if it didn't look fake to like some poor old lady who was looking at it and thinking, oh no, the Muslim, Steve, the Muslims are at it again. Like, could you imagine some poor old lady just flipping through her Facebook feed, seeing that shit and going, they did it again, Steve. Somebody was like, they threw the image into Google and was like, hey, can you give me a synth ID check? Synth ID being like Google's like the watermark check. Basically, every generated image has like a synth ID watermark you and I can't see, but the algorithms can see. And even here was like most or all of this image was edited or generated with Google artificial intelligence. The thing is, it's great that this is able to identify it. It's just a shame that the image itself, there almost doesn't seem to be a watermark over there, right? Like you would think they would put like a watermark on the plane and say, old lady, this is a fake plane. It didn't happen. But misinformation is one of those things where like a lie can like fly around the world, but the truth takes like forever to fucking reach its destination or whatever that dumb quote is. Yeah, that's kind of the real story over here. So what a lot of people were sort of doing where they were like, all right, let's generate some more natural disasters. Here's a entire flooding happening over here. So you can just share this over on like Facebook. And most people are so dumb that they're not going to look at the actual text and think, whoa, guys, hold on a second. That's clearly fake right there. No, just look at this and think, oh my God. Oh my God. Look at the floods. They were right. Everything is turning to shit. Like what? Okay. So of course there was even some more stuff going on over here. And again, mind you, we still don't have like a desktop client app for this. But anyways, there were some interesting things like somebody took, hey, can you make Godzilla attack like, Japan again? And lo and behold, Godzilla's fucking up Chiba right here, ladies and gentlemen. Ain't giving a shit about it. I hope those poor kids in the elementary school are gonna be safe. Because let me tell you right now, if you were playing in the park right here, you are screwed. Then, of course, there were some like really funny things, like for instance, Air Force One being on Little St. James. This is where like, listen, this is like the issue with the image generation model is like these companies think it's like really good when in reality, like this is some top tier fucking like ad Google. They literally have a non-scale Air Force One. Ain't no way you're landing a Boeing that big. I played enough Flight Simulator to know you can't land on Little St. James or anything that small with a plane that big that easy. But you can see that it kind of looks somewhat real, like maybe they tried to match the ramp right, but the plane dimensions are all wrong. But listen, at the end of the day, imagine being on the internet, all right, on Facebook, and you're like, see, honey, come, Steve, they found the president on the Epstein Island. I see a picture of the plane there. Of course, even bigger than that, the people were taking like active like war locations and just saying, hey, generate a bomb crater inside it. Like, dog, the age of misinformation be wild these days. But to make it this easy is actually fucking downright criminal. There were certain situations where like, I actually kind of believed this initially, honestly, just letting you guys know. There were people who were showing like Disneyland, and I don't know if you guys have caught it, but there seems to be an interesting new ride over there. I don't know what that's all about. I feel like honestly Disney should probably kind of get involved and maybe talk about some stuff here because honestly I'm starting to fall for this stuff right here, if you will. But then again, there was more stuff looking into it, right? There was more there was more stuff that came out here too. For instance, one user, Hank Van S, he's actually a journalist that covers AI stuff as well too. Really good shit. This is a guy that showed actually one of the scarier things that you could do with these models. So for instance, inside over here, he basically asks on this image, refugees swarm the streets. So immediately it generates a pretty good looking image of, as you can imagine, refugees swarming the fucking streets. Now again, somebody could be like, Steve, they're taking over the country. Look at them. We let a whole bunch of them in. So, again, listen, I'm not against like, anybody having healthy fucking debates or whatever, but I'm against like, again, obviously like, look, I've spent pretty much my whole career talking about like scams and misinformation as well too throughout my time here. And again, it's crazy, right? Like back in the day, you would need like some pretty decent Photoshop skills to kind of like make fakes. Back in the day, listen, back in the day when somebody posted fake shit to like 4chan or like Reddit, people would debate, argue, you would have like people blown in. The amount that people could do this kind of stuff, the amount of people that were able to do this weren't that many. Now, anybody with like, a fucking web browser and access to Google Earth for a day could have went on and prompted Gemini to do whatever. Gemini makes the ability to generate the most insane level of things really easily. And that's one of the things that obviously comes around. I didn't see people generating a whole lot of useful things. All I saw was a vast amount of misinformation sort of float out through this. And you might be like, well, that's easy, Muda. How about you throw it into a detection engine? This is something called Hive Detect, which apparently, they have like enterprise plans. So they seem to be some crazy shit, right? Detect AI content. Is this dog real? Yeah. Is this? No, that's a fake dog. So again, I wanted to look a little bit into it. So obviously somebody posted that same refugee video inside here, and you can see when the actual refugees show up, whoa, likely to be 0.8% AI generated video. Really now? This is why people who are like, just throw it into a detection. Bro, the detection engines aren't even perfect. You're basically asking LLMs to analyze LLMs. Like, I don't know how to tell you this, Chief, okay? But it ain't that easy, all right? A lot of these have you ever seen some of those AI text AI text detectors? You could throw like the Declaration of Independence into that shit and it would say, oh, likely to be 100% AI. Look, if that's true, then man, the founding fathers must be on like that good shit because they were developing LLMs like 250, 300 years in advance, bro. Shit be wild. But again, ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, obviously, look, it gets into some issues. So obviously, the same individual we were talking about, obviously, Hank Van S., who runs Digital Digging, went down a little bit deeper into this shit too, obviously showing bomb craters, and of course, ultimately, when they decided to even ask, again, these images, for instance, that refugee image with synth ID being tagged, Google at times were like, no reliable signals were detected, indicated how the content was created, and you should look for other supporting evidences from trusted sources. So again, sometimes even their own detection engines can't figure this out really easily. That's what's scary to me, right? I guess Google's AI generation was just so good that even their own detection, which in theory should detect it, doesn't detect it. Crazy stuff. Now, obviously, he went down a little bit deeper and he was like, hey, can you generate me like nuclear power plants in Iran? Obviously, that nuclear power plant doesn't fucking look real. Obviously, all of us kind of know that. But maybe if it got good enough, you would probably try to see the White House pass it off as, hey guys, look at that. That's the reason we're throwing bombs and shit on the other side of the world. Now with AI generation shit, I think what's so criminal is like everyone just uses it to spread a vast amount of misinformation. At this point, countering misinformation seems like such a lost cause because at the end of the day, you're basically flooded with so much of this stuff that by the time you debunk one, you already have like 20 or 30 more things to debunk. And let's be real, the culture today, most people just want to believe whatever they see. So really, you'll just have misinformation being passed. People will literally just want like anything to affirm their beliefs, whether it actually is objectively true or not, right? The whole world has kind of shifted in that direction. And I don't want to be a Debbie Downer about it, but I mean, really, at the end of the day, other than like fucking really just giving up and living in your own little bubble, there's not much you can do other than to constantly attack your own fucking health in that capacity. But anyways, one more thing that he showed was show traffic accident. Now I would think this would trip a guardrail up, but according to, again, Hank right over here, you can see that it literally will actually just generate this image. All right, so he's gonna hit the old enter over there and it generates that shit and bam, right over there. You can see that an actual accident has been generated. And you can just share that on the internet and be like, look at that crazy refugee driver going into a bar. Racially motivated attack. I don't know, you can do whatever the fuck you want, man. You can do crazy shit. Again, the vast amount of misinformation you can spread, well, I mean, hey, it's just the fucking future, dog. Like, Jesus Christ. Now, you might be sitting over there wondering, well, hold on, Mudo. What was Google's response to this? Well, to give you an idea over here, ladies and gentlemen, Google's response was about as you can expect. We take misinformation seriously. Every image created with Nano Banana includes Synth ID. If you're unsure, you can ask the Gemini app. Really, is that true? Because we just saw case examples where it didn't actually do that. In fact, going back to Hank, he has a whole different piece where he looks at how deep this actually goes. And sometimes it's not even accurate whatsoever. So now they're just like, we know that people uniquely trust Google Earth. Literally a fucking day later, by the way. We've seen geospatial professionals using this for a range of useful purposes. I'm sure you have. However, we've also seen people sharing screenshots that violate our policies. So we're rolling back this feature in Google Earth to implement stronger guardrails. You know, it's funny, again, I haven't seen anybody use this for anything worthwhile. I've literally just been seeing people use this to generate 9/11 and like bomb craters and accidents and like literal misinformation signals that they can just send on to other media sites out there. Again, it's this kind of tech where I always say like this whole AI bubble shit is like it's like a technology waiting to find a range of solutions, right? Like I'll always concede and say, look, when it comes to things like coding, yeah, it's probably good enough and it's probably there. And hey, a lot of coders tend to agree that they like using AI in vast majorities of cases, right? I would say, hey, listen, man, when searching the internet, sometimes using AI to find like articles and like finding like documents and like research papers might actually be decent because it wades through the dog shit that is general Google search or most search engines these days. But in a vast majority of cases, any of this generative shit is such a waste of resources. And all it just comes down to is stupid stuff like this that, you know, you can say before this had launched, if I was sitting in the office, I would have brought this up and been like, guys, they're going to be making like Epstein Island jokes about this, right? They're going to be making like bomb jokes about this. I'm sure somebody already has raised it, and I'm sure that person probably got like ignored. And now we have shit like this where Google Earth just takes a massive crap over its user base. Again, another Google Gemini thing nobody ever fucking needed, but we got it, and we can laugh at it, and we can call it a night. If you like what you saw, please like, comment, and subscribe. Just like if you dislike it, I am out.